Torah Or, Megillah Esther, page Sadik. We'll start 2, 4, 6 lines from the end of the page. The Alter Rebbe is explaining that Bria Yesh Miyayin is because the level of godliness cannot come in as is, even from Atzilus not, and therefore it has to be done with the whole tzimtzum and concealment. And now he's coming into, that's why it says, Tachlis Chochmah Tshuva Maisim Tevim, meaning, in order to bring down the level of Chochmah, which is normally above world because it's complete bittul, it has to be Tshuva Maisim Tevim. Okay? You know what? No, I'm sorry. We're going to start 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 lines in the bottom of the page. It says, therefore Chazal Tei, Tachlis Chochmah Tshuva Maisim Tevim. That the ultimate level of Chochmah is Tshuva and Maisim Tevim. The question is, good deeds has nothing to do with Chochmah. You can be a complete fool and still do Maisim. Ki Chochmah b'chinas ishtalshus b'chinas mamala kolam. Because Chochmah, like you said before, is the first level of the worlds. That's already the chain of the world where link goes into link and so on. He says, Elo shu b'chinas nimnes rishayna. It's counted first. It's part of Ishtalshut, but granted it's the first, meaning Shureish Samaka Lukulam. It's still the source. Chochmah is the source of the rest of Ishtalshut, as we said before. The fact the Chochmah is called Reishis, that's part of the counting, and therefore you can get 2 and 3. It sounds like this. Something which is the source of something else, even though it's above it, but there's automatically a connection between the two. Because if he couldn't be a source, if he wouldn't be a source, if he wouldn't be connected, he couldn't be a source. So the fact that Chochmah, as he explained before, where is godliness revealed first? In Chochmah, because it's complete bittul. So Chochmah is the first of all the 10 spheres. But nevertheless, Chochmah, granted, it's higher than the rest of the spheres. And like it says, where does Hashem rest in the world is in the level of Chochmah. But nevertheless, it's still the source of the rest of the spheres. So that's all Mamalik Kol Almin. Even Chochmah is Mamalik Kol Almin. But Tshuva, Masha'enkin, Tshuva, Maisim Tevim. But like he said before, Hamshachas Erin Tzal Baruch Hu Seviv Kol Almin. Brings down an infinite level. Before the Alter Rebbe, we learned yesterday and the day before, that Torah you have to digest. Mitzvahs are called garments because mitzvahs are above the level of Maamar Kol Almin. So what Alter Rebbe says, this is what it means. Tachlis Chochmah, if you want to make a Tachlis out of the Chochmah, meaning you want Chochmah's level to function properly, you need to have Tshuva Maisim Tevim, which is from the level of Seviv Kol Almin, to bring down that level of godliness into the lower worlds. Because Chochmah, as Chochmah, not the way it becomes limited all the way down. In order to have it revealed as Chochmah, the bittul, you need to have Tshuva Maisim Tevim. And again, the Alter Rebbe at the beginning of the Maamar said, in this Maamar he's explaining the advantage of mitzvahs over learning Torah. Even though Torah essentially is greater than mitzvahs, but in this Maamar he's explaining the advantage of mitzvahs over Torah. Torah is, bottom line, Maamar Kol Almin, which is a limited level of Elokus. Tshuva, Maisim Tevim are higher than world. Seviv Kol Almin. V'agam she'ena b'chinas geder Kol Almin. Even though Seviv Kol Almin really has nothing to do with world, and yet the mitzvahs are in the physical world. V'einenim shechelod ba'am, which is ayim mamish. He said, Mikoma came mi'acha shahadot sevam shechasa. The revelation comes from Erin Tzal Baruch Hu Mamish. HaSeviv Kol Almin, it's infinite level of Elokus, that only a small ray of it, so to speak, in the infinite level comes into the world. But nevertheless, it's still infinite revelation. In a minute level, but it's still infinite. It's a much infinitely greater level then the hamshacha that comes is Shtaushes derech Ila va'ola, which is the level of Mamala Kolam. To simplify, this is as follows. There's a level of world. World is limited. Mitzvahs, to a certain extent, come from a level of infinite. It comes from Sevel Kolam. It surrounds the body. It's not internalized in the body. Internalization of something is much more limited because then it has to come into the vessel, particularly in a limited form, based on that particular vessel, to be able to function. Gar mitzvahs are the infinite level of godliness. So even though it's only a ray of infinite, but a ray of infinite is still infinite, and therefore it's much greater than the whole level of Ishtaushus, starting from Chochmah and so on. And he says, Rak, lo kol ha-maisim shovim. Not all actions are equal, but it has to be maisim tevim. It doesn't say tachas chochmah tshuva umaisim. It's a maisim tevim. Tevim means, like he says, nas b'em ha-mitzvahs, which is Ratzon Elyon Baruch, has to be the will of Hashem, not my will. Now the Rebbe is explaining, Maisim Tevim means what mitzvahs, what Hashem wants us to do. It's not the level of Chochmah understanding. Torah is the level of Chochmah. Mitzvahs, in other words, Torah is Hashem's wisdom. Mitzvahs are what Hashem wants us to do. Willpower, even by the human person, willpower is stronger than wisdom, than Chochmah. Willpower will control and direct my Chochmah how I want it to be. Like the Gemara says, the person should always learn where they want to learn. Chafetz, two versions. And Chassidus explains both are right. But a person should, when I want to do something, I figure it out much better than when I don't want to do it. So willpower is not intellect or emotions. Willpower dictates intellect and emotions. So very simply put, Torah is the wisdom of Hashem. Mitzvahs are what Hashem wants us to do, the will of Hashem. Will is higher than wisdom. So therefore mitzvahs are higher, maisim tevim, meaning mitzvahs are higher than the level of Torah, of Chochmah. Very simple.
Is there a difference between Torah and mitzvah?
Yeah, Torah is learning wisdom, and mitzvahs is doing the will of Hashem. Torah is also a mitzvah, by the way. But we're not talking about Torah as a mitzvah, we're talking about Torah as learning Torah, connecting with the wisdom of Hashem. Yes, it's Hashem wants us to connect to His wisdom. But that's the mitzvah aspect of learning. But then there's the learning aspect of learning, which is not the mitzvah. You're not talking about the mitzvah aspect of learning.
Sometimes you learn something, or somebody tells you something, it changes the route. You learn Torah, you learn wisdom, it changes your route.
Correct. But that's coming momata lamaila. It's a catch-22 situation. I want something because I love it. But then when I love it, I want it more. It's a catch-22 situation. Yeah. But originally, Ratzin starts from this is what Hashem wants. It's not, I understand that's what Hashem wants. Okay? In a more simplified way, Nasa is will, Nishma is understanding Torah. Will do means Hashem wants, we're going to do it. Now, in order to know how to do it, you have to learn. Right? Therefore, Chassidus, in other places where it speaks about the advantage of Torah, asks, yeah, if Torah teaches me how to do the mitzvah, so how can one be greater than the next? You know, the learning is greater than the ratzon. Because I don't know how to do it if I don't learn it. But that's not doing the will of Hashem.
Is Ten Commandments Torah?
This is the essence of Torah.
Okay. In Ten Commandments it says, honor your parents. So when I want to do mitzvah, I said I'm going to do the mitzvah of honoring my parents. I'm not doing mitzvah, I'm doing Torah.
Doing a mitzvah of the Torah. You're not learning Torah when you honor your parents. You're not learning Torah, you're doing Torah, you're doing the mitzvah. But there's a fundamental difference between honoring your parents because it's the right thing to do versus honoring your parents because Hashem said so. See, the Ma'asim Tovim is not what you're doing. In other words, practically put, halachically put, in the world's perception, okay, a parent that has a child and gives them up, doesn't meet them, see them, nothing. They're adopted by a parent, okay? Now, ask the secular world, who is the parent of that child? The secular world will tell you, which makes a lot of sense. This parent abandoned the child, and this parent is raising the child. So who's the parent of the child? Who do you have a mitzvah of kibbud av v'em? The adopted parent, not my biological parent. Right? That's logic. Comes along Torah and says, no. Kabed savicha v'simacha doesn't say because. If the Torah say, honor your father and mother because they raised you and paid tuition for you and stayed up at night for you and had heart attacks because of you, okay, then it makes sense. Then if you're not, didn't raise me, I have nothing to do with you. When Torah says a logical mitzvah, it's absolute. That's the will of it, not seichel. Honor your father and mother, according to Torah, is not because a logical reason they raised me. You honor your father and mother in halachas, pashut halacha. Your biological parents, you have a biblical mitzvah to honor. The adopted parents, out of decency and menschlichkeit and just appreciating what somebody did for you, you have to honor them also. It doesn't make sense. Or I'll give you another example, the classic example we always give. Torah says don't steal. What happens if you could justify stealing, i.e. Robin Hood? No, the Persians know Robin Hood?
Yes.
We learned it many times, okay. Robin Hood in folklore is a hero. He stole from the rich to give to the poor. According to halacha, Robin Hood was a ganef. He wouldn't be allowed to testify. He's a ganef. He steals. Logically, he was right. According to Torah, Robin Hood was a ganef. Because when the Torah says don't steal, it's not because. It's an absolute, whether it makes sense or not. So even the logical mitzvah Torah, again, it's all will of Hashem, coming back to your question. I honor my parents, it's not because, I'm doing it because Torah said so, not because logic dictates it. And it's a whole big difference. It's a fundamental difference. Am I doing it because I understand that's the way it should be done? Or for that matter, society understands the way it should be done? Or am I doing it because Hashem said so? And the practical difference is when society or intellect demands that it shouldn't be that way. And Torah comes along and says, no, anyway, it doesn't matter. That's the fundamental difference. He says, the Surats and only a sitz, Hashem wants the wood. The tzitzis should be from wool. Hashem could have made the tzitzis be from who knows what. The klav shel tefillin, the parchment of tefillin. And in this mitzvah, when you're doing it, is a revelation of the infinite level of Hashem Belishum has to panim levush without any concealments. Chachma Torah comes, the wisdom of Torah comes down into a lot of concealments. It deals with physical things. Mesha'en kan shar kol ha'maisim. But all other actions, asher lo lavaya hema, which are not for the sake of Torah mitzvahs, hagam sherin tov baruch ha-sev kol alma, u'makav kol elmis, even though the infinite level of Hashem, ma'ahava ha'yesh, creates the yesh, v'asi yesh mi'ayin. So now the question is like this. If I'm doing an action, right, but who allows me to do that action? Hashem does. Without Hashem, I couldn't do it. So why isn't there meir, the infinite will of Hashem, into that thing, even though it's not a mitzvah? The answer is because it's not what Hashem wants. It's only coming down through tons of concealment. The will of Hashem coming down in tons of concealment. So then it's a separate entity, which is not connected to Hashem. So Elokus is not revealed in it. Which I would say they're completely bottled to Hashem, and Hashem reveals itself in it without any concealment whatsoever. What? No. And so what's the...
What about it? I mean, the will of Hashem that the hashkafa happens there.
Is it revealed or not revealed?
Of course it's revealed.
No. When something a leaf turns over, you know why?
If I came from Texas to California, Hashem wanted to come here.
Correct. Do you know why?
I know why.